Hello everyone. Topic: Extortion 17 follow-up. I did a video back on April the 28th as this story was breaking. And the story I'm talking about here is the Extortion 17 cover-up. I'm not going to go through all the minor details of it as I did in the previous video, but I will go through a brief recap of this for those of you who haven't seen it, and I'll tell you what I have going on today with the follow-up to this story. So for a brief rundown of the facts of the story, I'll go through them for you now. Extortion 17 was an operation that occurred 6 years ago on August the 6th, 2011. It was the single most deadly incident in the Afghan war. And it's an incident that, as we're learning from a whistleblower, could have been prevented. On that particular evening, there were 30 Americans, 17 SEAL Team 6 Navy SEALs were killed as they were shot down in the Tangi Valley in Afghanistan in an ambush. Basically what happened was, on that particular evening of August 6, 2011, the 75th Rangers were in a firefight. They were pinned down. They called in for an air weapons support team to come in and fire on some of the guys who had them pinned down, who were Taliban fighters. The helicopter gunships came in, they fired on them, and they got most of them, but there were two who they did not get, two who did survive. Now, the official story and part of the cover-up is that these two fighters disappeared, and officially they say they don't know what happened with these two fighters who disappeared into the environment. But we now know from the whistleblower, Captain Joni Marquez, now retired from the Air Force. She was the co-pilot and the targeter on the AC-130 gunship on that particular evening, what's known as the Eyes in the Sky. Now, as part of the cover-up and as part of the Defense Department's cover-up, they stated in their initial report that there was no eyes in the sky that particular evening, and that was one of the reasons why they say that the operation went bad and all these guys got killed. But we now know that they're lying. We now know because after 6 years, this whistleblower, Captain Joni Marquez, who was the targeting officer on that Eyes in the Sky AC-130 gunship, was overhead watching the whole thing. They saw the two fighters escape. They saw the two fighters go into the village and round up more people. They saw them grabbing shoulder-fired rocket grenade launchers, and they saw them take up positions in a landing zone where the 30 Americans, including 17 Navy SEALs, were on their way to do a ground fill. In other words, the chopper was going to land, and these guys were going to deploy and help in the firefight. Now, the AC-130 gunship with Captain Marquez saw that these two guys got away, but they realized that the previous helicopters had come in, the gunships had killed quite a few of the guys on the ground, and so they attempted to do one of two things. They talked to their ground control people and said, hey, you know, you should call off the chopper. You should turn it back, because it looks like they're setting up on the ground, and it looks like they have shoulder-fired weapons. So you may want to either send the gunships back in to get these guys, or you may want to call off the chopper flight. But the ground control did not call off the chopper. They continued to have the chopper with the 30 Americans, including Navy SEALs, on the chopper, continued to the location to deploy. Now, according to Joni Marquez, it was the rules of engagement that kept them from being able to fire, because they, in the AC-130 gunship, not only did they have the radar to look down on the scene of the battlefield and see what was going on, but they also were equipped with weapons that they could have taken out those fighters on the ground who were preparing in a nest to fire the shoulder-fired grenades onto the chopper that they could obviously hear coming, or that they knew was coming. They were denied. The AC-130 gunship was told, no, you cannot fire on them because of the rules of engagement, or that you cannot fire on them until they fire on you. They also refused to turn back the chopper. So the AC-130 gunship sat there and watched as the Chinook came in to the field of battle, and then they hovered over the site for about 13 minutes, at which point they were shot down. So then they had hearings in Congress. First, we had the cover-up by the report of the incident that night, which said that there was no eyes in the sky that night, and that's one of the reasons why this went down. And then the Congress, of course, when they had their hearings, they held the hearings, but they went with the government story. They also refused to call quite a few witnesses who would have disputed the official story. So the Congress, and this was Jathan Chaffetz overseeing this oversight committee that helped carry out the cover-up. So there's a few things about this cover-up that we need to look at. Number one, as I stated, the Obama administration stated that there were no eyes in the sky. Eyes in the sky meaning the AC-130 gunship that flies overhead and scans the battlefield with radar and can also provide fire backup. They say that that flight did not exist that night, but we now know from the captain, who was actually Joni Marquez, who was actually the targeting officer on that AC-130 gunship, that it was in fact there. We were also told, as part of the cover-up, that the black box from the Chinook helicopter was not found. And we have learned that that is the first time, according to some JAG people in Afghanistan, military lawyers, that that's the first time that a down chopper in Afghanistan where a black box could not be retrieved. The excuse that they say that the black box could not be retrieved is because there was a flood. As I've mentioned in my previous video, I flew many hundreds and hundreds of hours in helicopters. I can tell you that the black box, which is not actually black, it's actually the ones I typically saw, there were really two. One would be yellow and one would be orange. These are very heavy. They're very heavy. They weigh a good 15 or 20 pounds. They have a steel reinforced casing. They're designed to take tremendous amount of impact. It would take a very strong flow of water to carry one of these away. Now, we have the pictures of the downed aircraft, and we can see it, and we can see many smaller, lighter pieces of debris that are lying right next to the helicopter. So if those small, light pieces of debris could not be carried away, I can assure you that 15 to 20 pound black box, or one of the two black boxes, flight recorders, data recorders, could not have been washed away in a flood. And we can clearly see from the pictures that there's no standing water, no none of the debris is covered in mud, nothing to suggest that there was a flood or anything like that. Number three, the Chinook helicopter hovered overhead for 13 minutes. Now, when you have special operators coming into a hot zone where there is enemy on the ground, especially if they have shoulder-fired rockets, shoulder-fired grenades, things like that, things that can take down helicopters, you certainly wouldn't have them fly right into the heat of the battle zone and then hover for 13 minutes. That's suicide. But that's exactly what happened. Another thing, that the particular Extortion 17 mission, they flew these 30 operators in on a Chinook helicopter. Again, for those of you who watched my previous video, you know that I logged in hundreds and hundreds of hours in helicopters. Never, ever once did I ever see in training with the infantry, the cavalry, or in the medical unit that I was assigned to, did we ever use a Huey or ever use a Chinook to transport people. Chinooks are very large, very slow, very loud helicopters. They're typically used to haul heavy equipment, jeeps, trucks, generators, and equipment. They generally are not used to transport troops. And if they are, you're going to have them very well protected from helicopter gunships and other aircraft. Because again, they're very slow, they're very loud, and they're very large. Very easy targets for shoulder-fired rockets, man pads, and things like that. So typically what you would do in a situation like this, and all the training I saw with the cavalry cav units that I train with, infantry units, is they generally use Hueys. We always deployed in Hueys whenever we deployed people. And typically in a Huey, you're going to get 6 to 8 people in there, which is what you would do. You would never put all your guys on one chopper, because if that one chopper goes down, you lose everybody. You would have them come in typically in groups of choppers in close formation, 6 to 8 guys on each chopper. That night, there should have been 6 to 8 Hueys carrying those 30 operators in, not one Chinook. It was a suicide mission. The only way that those special operators probably would have even, of course, they're being ordered to get on the flight. They probably had no choice, but they had to be awfully nervous. They had to be thinking, man, why in the world are we going in here on a Chinook? I certainly hope they got a lot of helicopter cover or air cover or something, because, you know, this is not a good idea. They were probably questioning that. But for some reason, I guess you follow orders. They told them to get on the Chinook, and they got on the Chinook, and they got them all killed. If I wanted to get 30 of my guys killed, I would put them on a Chinook helicopter, fly them in with no air support, or refuse any air support to them. No helicopter gunships. I wouldn't allow the AC-130 to fire on targets on the ground. I would let them hover over the target for 15, 20 minutes. That's exactly what I would do if I were trying to get some people killed. Also, after the event went down, many of the bodies of the special operators from Extortion 17 were cremated without the permission of their families. And again, as I stated previously, there were other people, operators on the ground. There were people on that AC-130 gunship. There were other people who were working at the command center who were well aware of everything I just told you, well aware of the fact that there was a gunship there, because they called in and told them to call off Extortion 17. They called in and asked if they could fire on the targets on the ground. There were other people and other witnesses. None of these witnesses were permitted to testify in the hearings in Congress. They weren't permitted. They were going to volunteer, but their story wouldn't have washed with the official story, and so they weren't allowed. So the Congress, headed up by Jason Chaffetz, and the Oversight Committee ran a cover-up operation. This is what happened with Extortion 17. Now, there's also is being alleged, and this is simply being alleged at this point, that the president of Afghanistan at that point, the puppet we put in charge, Hamid Karzai, who's a long-time CIA asset going all the way back to the 1970s, it's believed or alleged that possibly he was aware of the mission and gave the Taliban information that this mission was going to go down in order to set them up, to get them killed, because it's alleged that Karzai, it's alleged that the Taliban had proof or information that Karzai knew about the whereabouts of Osama bin Laden hiding in Abbottabad for over 6 years, and that if he didn't allow these Taliban fighters to get revenge by shooting down a bunch of Navy SEALs, including some of the ones who were part of SEAL Team 6, who conducted the Osama bin Laden raid, that they would come out with information that would sink him politically, or maybe come out and release publicly that Hamid Karzai knew that Osama bin Laden was there in Abbottabad for 6 years. And many people have alleged that since the very beginning of when that all went down. It's very hard to believe that Karzai and the intelligence people in the military in Afghanistan or Pakistan did not know the whereabouts of Osama bin Laden. He was staying in a building for 6 years, probably hooked up to a kidney dialysis machine. He had to be receiving medical treatment, had to be receiving food and supplies and things like that. He was literally living in a building that was in a compound where military and intelligence officers where living quarters were. He was living in a living quarters where there were military and intelligence people living. How in the world could you claim that they couldn't know for 6 years that Osama bin Laden was in this building, in this compound? It's very hard to believe. And apparently the Taliban or it's alleged that the Taliban was going to release this, make it public information that Karzai was aware for the entire 6 years of the whereabouts of bin Laden. And so they blackmailed him. The Taliban said, hey, we're going to release this information unless you give us some information and help us get revenge by killing the Americans who may have participated in the Osama bin Laden raid. So this is what's being alleged. But even if we take that completely off the table and we just look at the cover-up and what happened that night, what we're told happened and what actually happened, and we now have the whistleblower who was on the AC-130 gunship who gave her report to Sarah Carter of Circa News. Now, I am going to put the link for that, an excerpt, about a 5-minute excerpt of that report with Sarah Carter and the whistleblower, which you can watch if you have not seen the video. But I'm also going to tell you, and the reason I'm doing the follow-up today is this. After I did this video on April 28th, I sent a link to that video interview with Circa News, Sarah Carter, and the whistleblower to nearly every media organization you can think of. I sent it to ABC, CBS, NBC, CNN, and PBS. I sent it to Fox, and specifically I sent it to Sean Hannity, both his radio and television program producers. I sent it to The Five. I sent it to Greg Gutfeld. I sent it to The Insiders, the news show. I sent it to Bill O'Reilly. I sent it to probably 15 or 20 different people at Fox. So I can assure you, folks, that they know about this story. It's not like they don't know about this story. So the issue today is, why are they still not covering the story in any of the media outlets? Not in any of the network news programs, none of the cable news programs, none of their websites, none of their online sites. You can go look at all of them. The only place that this story is being covered is on Freedom Watch website, on Circa News website, and some of the alternative media websites. Nowhere in the commercial cable network news, none of the newspapers, not the New York Times, not the Washington Post, none of these people are covering this story. And so what does that tell us, and why is it so important that I make this video today? What that tells us is it shows us just what we've known for so very long, that there is a relationship between the military defense industry, the media, and the intelligence agencies. All three of these groups are literally one. They operate and work together. Clearly, they are being told, the major media networks are being told not to cover this story. Clearly. It's a major bombshell. It's a whistleblower story, and it's a major story. And the fact that this is not being covered by anybody tells you that there is a coordinated cover-up, not just from the original cover-up of the Defense Department's false report and the Congress's cover-up false hearings, but it continues to this day, even 6 years later, with a complete shutdown, a complete silencing of all media corporations across all spectrums other than the alternative media. So the important thing to learn here, folks, is this shows you how tightly connected the media networks, the defense industry, and to some extent the financiers. It is a giant cabal, is what we have here. And as I have just stated, because I have sent this information to all the major media networks and given them 2 weeks to respond, and not a single one of them has. And here's something else. Sarah Carter has been on Hannity twice in the past 2 weeks since I sent Hannity, both his TV and radio producers, the link and the story. And even though Sarah Carter was on twice with Sean Hannity, they did not bring up this story at all. Not at all. They were talking about their surveillance and other things, but they did not bring up the story at all. So even Circa has probably been told, and Sarah Carter and Hannity have been told, do not talk about this story. Clearly, there is a gag order on this story. So it's very, very important that we contact people in the media, send an email, whoever your favorite media person is, Hannity or O'Reilly, it doesn't matter who it is, whether you're on the left or whether you're on the right, whether you're a Republican, a Democrat, a liberal, a progressive, a conservative, a libertarian, it really doesn't matter. This is a nonpartisan issue. This is about a massive cover-up, the death of 30 American soldiers, having a lot to do with the rules of engagement, which may still be in place, which could lead to the deaths of even more people. It's about the cover-up, a known cover-up by the Congress, by the DOD, and it's a larger story of an overall gag order being placed on these major military corporations and media corporations. Remember, a lot of these major media corporations are owned by larger parent companies who also own defense contractors. I mean, NBC is part of the same conglomerate as General Electric. General Electric is a major defense contractor, and here we have the same company that owns General Electric owns NBC. And this relationship, and of course we know the intelligence agencies are deeply embedded into all these news organizations, whether they be network, cable, or print. So we have a gigantic, massive cover-up that continues. We now have obviously a gag order on major media corporations, all including network, cable, and print. They do not want to talk about this story. There is a gag order. So what we need to do is that each and every one of you that see this video need to send at least one email to some media organization and provide them with the link to the video and tell them that this story needs to be covered. Maybe you want to call your congressman. Maybe you want to send them an email. The most important thing is that if everyone that sees this video puts it on their Facebook page, puts it on their Twitter, spreads this link, and everyone that sees it sends at least one email or places one phone call to someone, either their member of Congress or someone in the media, to tell them that they need to cover this story. This is a major story, and it is being silenced, and we need to bring it to the forefront. We need to bring the people accountable who were responsible for the cover-up, and we need to take a look at those rules of engagement. So this is my follow-up to the Extortion 17. I certainly hope that you'll share this video on your social media networks, that you'll spread this video around, that and keep in mind, folks, I don't make a penny from doing these videos. You see no ads on my videos. I don't have a Patreon account. I don't take donations. None of this. I'm not in this for the money. I'm in this for the truth, and we need to get the truth out about this. So you can find more information on the Freedom Watch website. You can Google Extortion 17. But whatever you do, spread this video far and wide. And everyone that sees this video, please send at least one email or place one phone call and demand that we get to the bottom of what really happened with Extortion 17 and the cover-up that ensued afterwards. Thank you. You'll have a good day. And let's take care of business. See y'all. Bye.